A big thank you to all of you. We know that you listen to a lot, because I'm sure you rehearse all the time, of isolated music. And now you get a chance to hear it as an ensemble. So you are in for a treat tonight. Please join me in welcoming our 6th graders to the stage for tonight's performance with Mr. Erickson and Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, and thank you so much for coming tonight to our band concert. We'll go quick because I know we got a lot of bands up here to play, and so we'll move fast, talk as little as possible. But for the next tune, we're going to have Mr. Johnson, the other band director, come up, and he's going to conduct this one.
All right, we've been having a great year this year in 6th grade band. We see our kids just about every other day, and we have made a ton of progress. I mean, I think back, it was a year ago, the combined Valentine Hills Bel Air concert, and how far they have come in a year. And it really reminds me, of course, because I did that concert last week with this year's kids. So I'm looking forward to getting a whole new batch and bringing them to this level, which is very impressive. You'll find a QR code for summer band. Normally at about this concert, we really pump up summer band because we got a great advanced middle school band that's a lot of fun. I heard the Chippewa site is being waitlisted. We're trying to see if we can find more space there. So if you're still interested, get on the waiting list. We're trying to see anything we can do, and I heard there might be a few spots left available for our Edgewood location as well. We don't have 3 locations because it just didn't work out with as much work as they're doing at Highview this year. We couldn't do it there, and then we couldn't do it, anyways, the timing didn't work at any of the other buildings. So we apologize we don't have more spots available for people, but get waitlisted if you're interested, or if you do have one of those 5th graders involved. I think there are still spots for our intro to middle school band. With that, I will bring back Mr. Erickson to conduct this next song, which is Rock, Paper, Scissors.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, all the 6th grade parents. Thank you for being flexible with the venue change. Normally we'd be at Highview, but with the construction, we had to move to this. You know, this place isn't quite as good as the Highview gym, but we'll set. But thanks so much for being here. I know it's a lot to change things up. You know, almost not quite at the last minute, but sort of. So thank you so much. This is a great group of kids. They've been working hard all year. They're just an absolute pleasure to have in class every day. They're just really fun. So thanks again, and we'll go on to our last piece, Dark Ride. so now we're going to start the jazz band section of the concert. We have 2 tunes to play with you, and we're going to start with first a tune that Jaden here found. He found this, we bought it because he found this on the JW Pepper website, and he's like, we should play this tune, so we are doing that. We're going to do it. We're playing Jaden's tune. All right. All right, this is a really dedicated group of kids. They rehearse in the mornings before school at 6:45 a.m. twice a week. So let's give them a round of applause for all of you. However, for all the parents of jazz band kids, you can be happy. There's no more jazz rehearsals for the rest of the year, so you don't have to wake up early yourselves. Yeah. And thank you, parents, who've been getting up early and getting them there before school. Couldn't do it without you guys. So we got one more tune for you. It's music from The Incredibles. nice tight transition here. Good job, 7th grade. We're going to get started and we're going to play Fanfare for the Third Planet. Back up to conduct the next tune, which is one of the band's favorites, John Williams.
Did we all recognize all the songs? Star Wars main theme, Force Awakens, Jurassic Park, and the classic E.T. Gotta love John Williams. I'm gonna bring back up on the stage Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, how come he gets a bigger round of applause when he gets on stage? Okay, we got one more tune for 7th grade, and then we'll transition to have 8th grade come up, where we're going to play Foiled Again. start 8th grade, and you'll notice that there are a few 7th graders that stayed up here. That's because our last tune that we're playing, Illumination, you know, like I played it for the 7th graders a long time ago, and they were like, "Oh, that's a really cool tune." And I was like, "Oh wow, if you learn to play it, you can play it with the 8th grade." Oh, cool, let's get practicing more, right? And so some of them were like, "Okay, let's do it." They were all gung-ho about it, and I was like, "Well, you might as well learn all the tunes, right?" And so some of them are just up here, and you know, they're playing it all, so it's pretty cool. All right, we're going to start with Prairie Dance. So for this next tune, I didn't find this one. This was a kid a few years ago found this tune, thought it was really cool. It's from a video game, and he really wanted to play it. We didn't end up playing it that year. He was really mad at me, and his sister's in this band. And I don't think he really liked that his sister got to play this tune. So, you know, his sister and I kind of talked to him, hey, why don't you come play with him right now? Because he goes here at Irondale. So we're going to have James come on up. And he's going to tell us his dreams. I don't know if his sister likes having him play with the band or not. I don't know. You know, it's hard to say, but we love having him here. So this is a cool tune. We hope you like it. dreams just come true? Yes? All your dreams, all your wildest dreams just come true. Thanks for playing. You said just a bit. All right, for our next tune, we're going to bring Mr. Johnson back up. You can introduce.
So I'm kind of a traditionalist when it comes to band concerts. I feel that every band concert should have a march involved. Because if it weren't for the popularity of marches in America, we wouldn't have band in school. The reason we have band in school is because people loved that music so much, is they wanted to get this instrumental band music teaching in our schools. So I find it very, very important. So when it came time for me to kind of pick a tune, I had a favorite that I used to do back when I was directing at Edgewood. So this is a Henry Fillmore march. He's mainly known for doing more of circus marches than, say, kind of the traditional John Philip Sousa. I think it's a lot of fun. Listen for the woodwinds, just rip-roaring lines, super fast. I really like this one a lot. It's called the klaxon, after the old antique car horn. This was originally written for, I believe it was the Cleveland Auto Show of whatever year, I don't remember the year. But it's got that old "Aruga" sound, and this is written apparently to sound like that. I don't think it really sounds like that anywhere in the song. I don't care. I like it. This is the klaxon.
Before we play our last tune, there's a lot of people we want to thank. There's a bunch of teachers here that are chaperoning, helping move kids around from room to room and do all of that. They're giving up their evening, so thanks to all those teachers. that are helping out. Let's give them a round of applause. Here supporting us too. Thank you so much for everything you do. I'd like to thank the students. This like all the students, 7th graders up there, the 6th graders that are here, 8th graders. Let's give them a round of applause. And thank you, parents, for all the support that you guys give. I mean, you guys are the ones making the practice 7 to 12 hours a day. Like, you wouldn't be up here doing this. But I'd like to say with this group, I'm really going to miss this group. This is a fantastic group of kids. It's just been a lot of fun working with them and listening to them grow back from when they were in 5th grade, 6th grade, and hearing what they can do now. It's pretty cool. Like you guys heard what 6th graders, what 6th graders sound like. You've heard them when they were in 5th grade. It's cool to see them up here playing this music. You guys agree? Let's give them a round of applause. And I just like, for these kids, I hope you guys keep going through high school, keep playing. Like this is a great opportunity you guys have. Keep playing all the way through. This is something like I think a lot of parents, if you didn't keep playing all the way through high school, a lot of people regret it. I never hear anybody ever come up and say, I really regretted sticking with it. That was the biggest mistake. But all the time, like people, they find out you're a band teacher. Oh, God, I wish I would have stayed with it. I hear that all the time. So stick with it, and this has been great having you guys here. I'm going to really miss you guys. So, all right, the next tune that we're going to play, our last tune, is probably is it the band favorite? Yeah? Well, so when we voted what tunes we're going to play, it was all right, which one do we have to play? It was almost 100% say, yeah, well, we have to play that one. So this one I heard, Mr. Johnson and I, we were at a clinic a year ago, we heard the Hastings High School band play this, and we were like, that is such a cool tune, we had never heard it before. And Maslanka, the composer, mostly composes high school, college stuff, and we were like, we showed it to the kids, it's so cool, and they're like, we should try to play it, and we were like, yeah, that's crazy, but we should do it. So, we did it, and we're going to play it for you guys, and I hope you guys like it. It's probably one of my favorite pieces that I played with a middle school band, so enjoy.